The sun rose gently over the still lake, bathing the surroundings in soft golden light. Birds sang melodiously from nearby trees. A crowd of disciples gathered, their faces eager with curiosity and reverence. The soft murmur of the river provided harmony to their shared moment of learning. Buddha emerged from his chamber, his robe flowing like a stream of serenity. Each step he took seemed to caress the earth with compassion and care. The disciples, sensing his arrival, folded their palms and bowed deeply in respect. Buddha looked at them with eyes that reflected endless understanding and infinite patience. He sat cross-legged at the base of the Bodhi tree, his back straight and his presence steady. Before him lay a lotus flower, white and pure, resting on a simple earthen bowl. Silence pervaded the assembly, as though the universe itself held its breath in anticipation. Buddha picked up the lotus flower and held it delicately between his thumb and forefinger. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if the act contained an entire universe of meaning. The disciples watched with unbroken attention, their hearts yearning to understand. Buddha's gaze swept across the crowd, touching each disciple without a word. The flower remained between his fingers, its petals open and untainted. The silence stretched on, expansive and profound, filling the minds of the disciples with questions. Some searched their minds for the meaning of the gesture, trying to decode its significance. Others felt a growing discomfort, unable to reconcile the silence with their thirst for wisdom. Only one disciple, Mahakasyapa, sat quietly with a serene smile blooming on his face. His expression carried no questions, only a quiet acceptance and deep understanding. Buddha nodded slightly, his eyes resting on Mahakasyapa, acknowledging his silent comprehension. His voice broke the silence, steady and resonant, carrying the weight of timeless truth. What can be spoken is limited by words, and what can be understood transcends language, Buddha said with measured clarity. True understanding arises in the stillness beyond words, where the mind ceases to seek and simply observes. The disciples listened intently, their hearts stirred by the simplicity and depth of his words. This lotus, Buddha continued, grows in the mud, yet it blossoms unsoiled, untouched by the impurities below. It teaches us that purity and wisdom come not from avoiding suffering, but from transcending it. He placed the lotus back in the bowl, allowing the flower to rest in stillness. One disciple asked timidly, "Master, why does Mahakasyapa smile? What has he understood that we have not?" Buddha turned his gaze to the questioner, his expression neither stern nor indulgent. "Mahakasyapa has smiled because he does not seek meaning through logic or analysis," Buddha replied. "He sees the flower as it is, without the burden of interpretation, without grasping for meaning." The disciples pondered his words, their minds wrestling with the notion of seeing without seeking. Another disciple spoke, "But Master, how do we free ourselves from seeking meaning? How can we simply observe?" Buddha's expression softened, his tone patient but firm. "To free yourself, you must first understand the nature of your seeking," he said. "Why do you seek? What do you fear losing if you do not find answers?" The question lingered in the air, a mirror reflecting each disciple's innermost doubts and desires. Buddha continued, "The mind seeks because it fears emptiness. But emptiness is not to be feared. It is where freedom resides." He closed his eyes briefly, his hands resting lightly on his knees, as if inviting them to follow his example. The disciples followed suit, closing their eyes and turning inward, guided by his silent presence. Moments stretched into an eternity as they sat together in stillness, their breaths synchronized like the rise and fall of a gentle tide. Buddha's voice emerged again, like a whisper carried on the wind, tender yet unwavering. "To observe without seeking is to witness the beauty of impermanence," he said. "The flower blooms today but will wither tomorrow. And yet, It is perfect as it is. The disciples opened their eyes, their faces reflecting a quiet introspection, their earlier restlessness now subdued. Buddha picked up a small pebble from the ground and held it in his open palm. "This pebble," he said, "is neither more nor less significant than the lotus. Both exist as part of the whole." He let the pebble fall, its descent marked by a soft thud against the earth. "Do not rank existence," Buddha advised. "Do not elevate one thing over another in pursuit of meaning. See all things as they are." A gentle breeze passed through the grove, rustling the leaves and carrying the scent of earth and flowers. The disciples felt a subtle shift within themselves, a loosening of the tight grip they had on their preconceived notions. "Master," one of them asked, "if we stop seeking, how will we know the truth?" Buddha's gaze held steady, his eyes shimmering with boundless understanding. "Truth is not something you find," he said. "Truth is what remains when you stop resisting the present." The disciples sat in awe, the weight of his words sinking deeply into their beings. They realized that the teachings were not answers, but invitations to look within. Buddha's silence was not empty. It was filled with guidance, waiting to be felt rather than understood. As the sun reached its zenith, casting its light across the assembly, Buddha rose slowly, his movements unhurried. The disciples followed his example, their minds quieter, their hearts lighter. Without another word, Buddha began walking toward the lake. His footprints pressed gently into the earth. The disciples trailed behind, each carrying the silent lesson etched in their hearts. The lake mirrored the sky, its surface unmarred, reflecting the clouds and the vast expanse above. Buddha stopped at the water's edge, turning to face his disciples once more. He gestured to the lake, its waters shimmering under the sun's warm embrace. "Be like this water," Buddha said, his voice calm and steady. "Reflect without clinging, flow without resisting." The disciples stood in silence, their minds and hearts attuned to the wisdom before them. They understood that the true teaching lay not in Buddha's words, but in the space between them. And so, they bowed deeply, their palms pressed together, their souls filled with gratitude. Buddha turned back to the lake, his reflection merging with the rippling water, an eternal dance of form and formlessness. The disciples knew that the lesson of the lotus, the pebble, and the lake would guide them long after the words had faded. The silence they carried within was not emptiness but a profound fullness, a boundless source of truth and peace. Another day, the sun hung low on the horizon, casting an amber glow over the quiet forest. Buddha walked along the riverbank, his steps as deliberate as a flowing stream carving its path through rock. The disciples followed closely, their hearts seeking wisdom, their minds teeming with unspoken questions. The rhythmic sound of water lapping against the shore blended with the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Buddha stopped suddenly and tapped his staff on the earth, its sound resonating in the still air. The disciples halted, their eyes fixed on the staff that now stood upright, planted firmly in the ground. Buddha turned toward them, his expression calm, as though the act carried no greater significance. The disciples, however, felt a strange stir of curiosity, their minds racing to understand his gesture. "What is the sound of this staff touching the earth?" Buddha asked, his voice even and measured. The disciples looked at one another, hesitating, unsure if the question required a literal answer or a deeper contemplation. One stepped forward and replied, "Master, it is the sound of the staff striking the ground. Nothing more." Buddha smiled faintly and nodded, his eyes reflecting a boundless patience. "And what is the sound of the staff that does not strike?" he asked, his tone carrying a quiet gravity. The disciples were taken aback by the question, their minds spinning in search of an answer. They stood in silence, the rustling leaves and murmuring river filling the void of their hesitation. Days passed, and the question lingered in the air, like an echo reverberating in the depths of their minds. The disciples meditated on the question, their thoughts cycling through logic and introspection, seeking to unravel its mystery. One disciple, Ananda, approached Buddha after days of contemplation, his face a mix of resolve and humility. "Master," Ananda said, bowing low before Buddha, "I have meditated long, and I believe I understand the sound of the unstruck staff." Buddha's gaze met Ananda's, his eyes as deep and flowing as the river beside them. "Speak, Ananda," Buddha said, his voice neither urging nor discouraging, but simply present. Ananda said, "The sound of the unstruck staff is not in the ears. It is felt in the stillness within." Buddha nodded, a faint smile gracing his lips. "Ananda," he said, "you have begun to hear the soundless sound, the voice of the void that fills all things." The other disciples listened intently, their hearts stirred by the exchange, their minds yearning for clarity. Buddha addressed the assembly, his voice calm but resonant, like a drumbeat that ripples through an empty hall. "The sound of the void is not a sound in the ordinary sense," he said. "It is the absence of craving, the absence of clinging, the stillness that speaks when the mind is quiet." His words hung in the air, carried on the soft breeze, entering the hearts of his followers like seeds awaiting fertile soil. One disciple asked timidly, "Master, how can we hear the sound of the void? What must we do to listen?" Buddha's expression softened, his gaze enveloping the disciple like a warm embrace. "To hear the void, you must first understand your own noise," he said. "What do you fear when silence surrounds you? What do you flee when stillness envelops you?" The disciples fell silent, their eyes closing as they turned inward, exploring the question Buddha had posed. Buddha stood and began walking, his footsteps light but purposeful, and the disciples rose to follow. As they walked, the sound of their footsteps merged with the symphony of the forest, a subtle reminder of their interconnectedness with all things. Buddha led them to a clearing where a solitary tree stood, its branches reaching skyward like an offering. He gestured to the tree, its roots visible where the soil had eroded, its leaves dancing in the wind. "This tree," Buddha said, "does not ask the wind why it bends. It does not cling to stillness, nor reject motion." He placed his hand on the tree's bark, its texture rough and weathered, and said, "To hear the void, be like the tree, accept the wind and the stillness equally, without grasping for one or the other." The disciples listened, their minds opening to the simplicity and profundity of the analogy. The sound of the rustling leaves seemed to echo Buddha's words, as if nature itself were affirming his teaching. Buddha sat beneath the tree, and the disciples gathered around, forming a circle of attentive minds and open hearts. "When you strike the earth with a staff, you create sound," Buddha said. "But when you refrain, the silence is not absence. It is presence of potential." The disciples nodded, their understanding deepened by the juxtaposition of sound and silence, action and inaction. One disciple, curious but cautious, asked, "Master, is the void not empty? How can it contain potential if it is nothingness?" Buddha's eyes gleamed with a gentle light, and his voice carried the clarity of a crystal-clear stream. "The void is not nothingness," he said. "It is the source from which all things arise, the space where creation unfolds." He picked up a fallen leaf and held it before them, its veins intricate and delicate, a testament to nature's artistry. "This leaf exists because the space around it allows it to be," Buddha said. "Without the void, there can be no form, no sound, no life." The disciples gazed at the leaf, their minds grappling with the vastness of the concept, their hearts resonating with its truth. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Buddha rose and gestured toward the horizon. "The void is like the sky," he said. "It holds the clouds, the stars, the moon, yet remains untouched by them. The disciples turned their gaze to the sky, their minds quieting, their hearts absorbing the lesson as naturally as the earth absorbs rain. Buddha began walking again, his steps unhurried, his presence as steady as the turning of the seasons. The disciples followed, their spirits buoyed by a newfound understanding, their questions no longer a burden but a pathway. They returned to the riverbank, where the water flowed endlessly. Reflecting the first stars appearing in the darkening sky, Buddha stopped and turned to them, his face serene, his eyes reflecting the infinite depth of the night. The sound of the void is heard in the flow of the river, the rustle of leaves, the stillness of the night, he said. It is not separate from you. It is you. To hear it, you need only listen without seeking. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts filled with gratitude and reverence, their minds quieter than they had ever been. They realized that the sound of the void was not something to be grasped but something to be felt, something that arose naturally when the noise of the mind subsided. And so, they sat by the river, their breaths synchronized with the flow of the water, their beings attuned to the silent symphony of existence. The stars above twinkled like distant lanterns, their light a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the boundlessness of the void. The disciples knew that the lesson of the unstruck staff, the solitary tree, and the flowing river would guide them long after the words had faded. The soundless sound they carried within was not emptiness but a profound fullness, a boundless source of truth and peace. Another day, the air carried a gentle chill, as the grove of sal trees awaited its silent visitor. Buddha walked slowly among the towering trees, his footsteps light, yet filled with the gravity of wisdom. The disciples followed in quiet reverence, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of his nearing departure. The stars had just begun to fade, leaving traces of silver in the deep blue sky, heralding the approach of dawn. Buddha stopped beneath the largest sal tree, its branches spreading out like a sanctuary of nature's embrace. He lowered himself onto the soft earth, his movements deliberate, filled with the presence of one who fully accepts impermanence. The disciples gathered close, their breaths synchronized, carrying the weight of unspoken questions and a yearning for final teachings. One disciple, trembling with emotion, approached Buddha with folded hands, tears glistening in his eyes. "Master," he said, his voice cracking, "after you leave, who will guide us? How will we follow the path?" Buddha looked at him, his gaze soft but piercing, his presence radiating infinite patience. "The Dharma is your guide," Buddha said, his voice quiet but steady. "Truth is not found in another. It is revealed in yourself." The disciple bowed deeply, his tears now mingling with gratitude and acceptance. Buddha turned his gaze to the assembled group, his expression serene, his words flowing like a gentle river. "Do not seek a master to follow," Buddha said. "The teachings are not bound to me but reside in the silence within you." Buddha gestured to the earth, his hand touching the soil lightly, as though he were honoring the ground beneath him. "The path is like this earth," he said, his tone steady. "It holds you, but it does not tell you where to walk." The disciples pondered his words, their minds filled with images of paths stretching into the unknown, each one shaped by their own choices. Buddha picked up a fallen leaf, its edges curling, its color fading as it neared its end. "This leaf," Buddha said, "does not resist its impermanence. It completes its cycle, returning to the earth to nurture new life." He placed the leaf back on the ground and added, "Do not fear the end, for it is also a beginning. The truth is cyclical, always renewing itself." The disciples nodded, their hearts stirred by the simplicity of the lesson, their fears gradually dissolving into a deeper understanding. Another disciple stepped forward and asked, "Master, what should we do when doubts cloud our minds? How can we stay true to the path?" Buddha's eyes glimmered like the morning dew, reflecting both the question and the answer. Doubt is not your enemy, Buddha said. It is a reminder to question, to seek clarity, to deepen your understanding. He gestured to the rising sun, its light spilling over the grove, bathing the sal trees in golden hues. The sun does not banish darkness, Buddha said. It reveals shadows, showing their shape and essence without fear or resistance. The disciples felt the weight of the analogy, their minds now seeing doubt not as an obstacle, but as part of their journey. Buddha closed his eyes briefly, his breath steady, as though he were harmonizing with the rhythm of the earth beneath him. When doubt arises, he said, sit with it, listen to it, and let it reveal its lesson. Truth emerges from acceptance. The grove grew quieter, as even the faint whispers of wind seemed to pause. Honoring the sacred moment, Buddha opened his eyes and looked up at the branches above him, their leaves swaying gently in the breeze. These trees, Buddha said, stand tall because their roots are deep. Their strength comes not from reaching upward but from grounding downward. He gestured toward the roots visible beneath the soil, their network strong and interconnected, anchoring the trees firmly. Be like the roots, Buddha said. Anchor yourself in mindfulness, in compassion, and in wisdom. Grow upward without losing your connection to the ground. The disciples bowed deeply, their palms pressed together, their spirits resonating with the profound simplicity of his words. One disciple, unable to contain his curiosity, asked, Master, if the Dharma is within us, how do we awaken it? How do we find it in silence? Buddha's face softened, his gaze holding the disciple as though he were a cherished child seeking comfort. The Dharma is like a lamp, Buddha said. It is always lit, but often hidden beneath the veils of craving, aversion, and ignorance. He lifted his hand, his palm open as though offering an invisible light, and said, to awaken the Dharma, uncover the lamp within you. Remove the veils by observing them without attachment. The disciple nodded, his heart lighter, his mind clearer, as he felt the glow of Buddha's words illuminating his doubts. The grove seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the teachings, each word sinking into the soil and echoing through the hearts of the disciples. Buddha gestured toward the horizon, where the sun now fully emerged, bathing the world in warmth and light. The horizon, Buddha said, is not a destination, it is a reminder of the infinite journey that lies ahead, both within and without. The disciples felt the truth of the statement resonate deeply, their minds no longer seeking final answers but embracing the endless quest for understanding. Buddha lay back against the tree, his breath slower but steady, his presence unwavering even as his physical strength diminished. The disciples gathered closer, sensing the gravity of the moment, their hearts both heavy and uplifted. Buddha raised his hand weakly, pointing toward his heart and then toward theirs, his gesture deliberate and profound. The Dharma, Buddha said, his voice faint but clear, is not outside of you. It is within, always guiding you home. The disciples sat in meditation, their breaths synchronized with Buddha's, their minds quiet but alert, their hearts wide open. They realized that Buddha's silence was not emptiness but a completion, a fullness that embraced all things. The grove seemed to shimmer with an ethereal light, as though the universe itself were bearing witness to the teaching. Buddha closed his eyes for the final time, his face serene, his presence vast and boundless, his spirit merging with the infinite. The grove fell silent, yet it was filled with a resonance that words could never capture, a vibration that transcended sound and form. The disciples bowed deeply, their foreheads touching the earth, their hearts filled with gratitude and reverence. They sat beneath the sal trees, their breaths steady, their minds quiet, their souls carrying the silent teaching forward. The lessons of the leaf, the roots, and the horizon echoed within them, shaping their paths in the stillness of understanding. The grove remained a sacred space, filled not with absence, but with the profound presence of Buddha's silence. The disciples knew that the Dharma would guide them, not as a rigid map, but as an inner compass attuned to the truth. They rose slowly, their hearts lighter, their minds clearer, ready to carry the teachings into the world. The grove of sal trees stood as a silent witness, its branches reaching skyward, embracing both the impermanence and eternity of the moment. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.